Hey there. Hi. Look, I want to talk to you about the guilt that shows up when we finally choose ourselves and actually the cost that happens when we don't. And to be honest, for a lot of us, that's something that we really choose not to talk about. If we talk about it, we're thinking, I'm selfish, I'm being selfish, someone won't understand what I really mean or what I felt, whatever the reason is. So, a lot of times that's one of those things that we hide. And it's not that you don't know that you need to rest or you need to take time for yourself or whatever it may be. And you know what you need. It's not that you don't know, and you really know this, that something has to change. You can't keep going at this pace. You can't keep doing this. And the thing is, what it really is that you care. I mean, let's call it what it is. You care. We care deeply. We care for those that we work with. We care. That's just who we are and how we show up in the world. And we have a strong code of ethics and and we care for the people in our lives that have needs that want us in some capacity or others. And so when we see a need, when we see somebody hurting, when we see a place where we can help, it is so hard to just stand by and do nothing. I mean, it is gut wrenching. And look, when I said that, you're probably thinking that sounds great, right? And it sounds lovely. That's integrity, and that's who I am. But what happens is if you live that way long enough, there comes this point where you start realizing that, well, it's costing you, and it's costing you more than you're willing to admit, even to yourself. And because you're tired and your body feels it, your mind feels it, and that means really your whole life, everything in your life is feeling it or having some repercussion behind it. And when you know that you need to pull back and you're trying to make that final determination, what makes it hard isn't always that you're exhausted. You know, I'm exhausted. A lot of times when we're exhausted, we'll keep pushing through anyway, right? We'll keep doing what needs to be doing. What makes you stop from making that final decision to choose you, to do something different, is the guilt. Because women like us, guilt doesn't just show up after you made the decision, right? You say, no, you can't have this, or I'm not going to do this. And all of a sudden, a few minutes later, it's, oh my gosh, why did I do that? Well, that's not how it does. Not with us. It actually shows up before. A lot of times what's happening is that guilt is having say in our decision even before we make it. Because what's happening is the moment we think or we decide, you know what, I got to take a break, or I can't do this, or I can't keep at this same pace. The moment we do that, it feels like somehow somebody somewhere is going to be disappointed or hurt. And that, the moment we choose doing something for ourselves, even though it's good, even though it's needed, we realize that when we choose that, somebody else has to pick up that slack. And for a woman that has spent her whole life being good, being loving, being responsible, being the one who shows up, that can feel actually unbearable, because now you're not just dealing with your need to rest. What you're dealing with is the question that runs underneath everything. Why does taking care of myself feel wrong? So wrong when I know how necessary it is. That is the conversation that we need to have right here, right now, today. And before we get in it, I want to say I'm Mischelle O'Neal, and you are here with me today on Break Time Live. And I am so thrilled and honored that you took a few minutes out of your day to sit here with me and have this conversation. So, in actuality, the hardest part is actually before anything even happens. A lot of times we work ourselves into a tizzy imagining, just imagining what they're going to feel or how they're going to respond to what we're about to say. And this can actually turn into, you're wondering, everything can go haywire. Everything can go sideways. Everything can just see, see how just thinking about it just works you up. And really, if you think about it, think about it. But if you think about it, by the time you finally have that conversation or make that decision, you've already put yourself through this emotional roller coaster, this up and down, yes, no, what if, all of these things, not even because something has actually happened yet. You've already, they say that a lot of times your mind doesn't know if something is real and actually happened, or if you're just going through it and walking through it mentally. And so you're walking through the what ifs, the mights. You've already put your body and your mind through that upheaval. And you've already gone through the disappointment, and you've already felt all that tension, and you've already braced yourself for how bad it's going to be. And sometimes, if we're honest, what happens is we make it bigger than it already is. Because once your emotions get involved, your mind can take off running. And what often happens is that you're not just responding to that moment. You're responding sometimes to what it reminds you of in the past. The last time you said no, the last time you chose you, a time when you had to do something that was similar, when somebody reacted badly, a time when holding your ground felt like it really cost you. So now, even if this is different, if the situation is different, if the person is different, if the environment is different, or even if it's slightly different situation, you've already locked into that past experience. And that's where the guilt start getting, well, too much. And when that happens, it gets really hard to see this moment, the one that you're in, not the one that you used to have, but to see the moment that you're in for what it really is. And then what actually happens is that's when you want to give in to save yourself from all that you imagined and all that have maybe happened before. Because now it's not just something that you were anticipating in your head. Now it feels real. And when I thought about that, I want you to see this, because what happens is you see it on their face first. And if you're a mother, you're going to understand what I'm getting ready to tell you. It's like when you tell your child, no, no, you can't do this. And it's something that they really, really wanted, something that really mattered to them, right? A chocolate chip cookie. No, maybe not that simple, but you know what I'm saying. And you see those tears start to well up in their eyes, and you see that top lip start to quiver. Oh my gosh, your heart, even though you know it's not good for them, even that although you know you're going to stand your ground, you can feel their disappointment. You can feel their hurt. And then sometimes to just top it off, you know they're going to react in anger because they're so disappointed. So now you're not just sitting there with the fact that they're hurt and that you want to make that boo-boo go away. You want to make them feel better. Now you're having to sit there with the reaction to their hurt. And that's hard. That's really hard. Because a lot of times in that moment, you almost, notice I said almost, you want to excuse their behavior and their anger and how they talk to you or treat you. You almost, again, almost want to backtrack. You want to make it better just so you don't have to keep sitting there with their disappointment or deal with it later. And this doesn't just happen to our kids. You know what? Think about it. It happens at work. Yeah. It happens in your business. Sometimes one of the hardest things to do is to look at someone that you know is trying so hard, somebody that you know is hoping, wishing for something, somebody who is counting on something. And you know that you have to tell them that it's not going to happen. Not this time for them, that they're not getting it, that it's not going to play out the way they desire. And maybe their disappointment is justified. I mean, absolutely. Maybe it makes sense that they feel hurt. You would. In fact, you'd be angry. And their frustration is real and it makes sense. But that still doesn't make the guilt go away. And it doesn't make the feeling of responsibility in instance go away either. And that's why it's so hard. Not just because of the feelings and the reactions that they're going to go through, but because the feeling that you're going to go through too. Because even though you know that decision is right and that sitting there with somebody else's disappointment, that can still feel unbearable. Because if we don't talk about this, if we don't pull it out in the open, guilt will keep influencing more of your decisions. And we'll keep making decisions from that guilt without even realizing. In fact, I can just about bet that you never or rarely think about it that way. That really, when we backtrack, when we change our mind before it comes out of our mouth, that guilt that you were feeling, that guilt that you didn't want to deal with, was pretty prominent in that decision making. And what that guilt makes us do a lot of times is just give in. Simple as that. We give in. You move when you should have stayed still. You reacted when you should have responded. You step in when in all actuality, you should have stepped back. And you go against what you know is the right response. You go against what you know in your gut, from your heart of hearts. And it's not always that you're doing something wrong. It's not making the decision. It's that you're not making that decision from a place of steadiness, of you being in charge. You're making it from that pool of guilt. You're making it from emotions, from feelings. You're making it from the discomfort. And that hit, because nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. Nobody searches after that feeling of being uncomfortable. And so you're making that decision from the discomfort of what's really happening right there in front of you. And that matters. Because one of the things that I'm really adamant about, and that I teach my women all the time, is the importance of interruption. And when I'm talking about an interruption, I'm talking about a pause, a breath, the moment where you stop long enough to get out of that pool of feelings so that you can actually think clearly and make that right decision. Sometimes that means not answering right away. Sometimes that means walking away and actually coming back. Sometimes that actually means letting somebody have their moment. Let them have their tantrum, their disappointment, and you have yours too. And then you revisit it when you're both in a better place. But that interruption is necessary Because when your guilt is loud and you're looking at their face and you're crying and you're upset, or you can feel that disappointment, that is not always the best moment to make your next move. And if you don't interrupt that moment, guilt will make the decision for you. And I want to show you what that looks like. If you're at the point where someone you're feeling guilty because you have to disappoint someone sometimes, and you're looking at their face and you're watching them, sometimes the stepping away means, you know what, I understand how you're feeling and what you're going through right now, and everything you may be feeling. And because of that, we're not going to finish that conversation. Because of that, right now, why don't we step away from each other and take time to process that and process this? And the reason behind that, and that reason I say just take a pause, just interrupt what's going on right now, is because when you do that, when you make that interruption, it allows that circuitry to be shorted, to stop. And that's what we need. And if you don't interrupt that moment, guilt makes that decision for you. And I think this is the part that we have to learn. Just because somebody is disappointed doesn't mean you have to rush in and fix it. Their feelings are real. I don't discount anyone's feelings. Their feelings are real. Their disappointment may make sense. It may be justified, but that does not automatically make it yours to relieve. Sometimes what you need to do is nothing right then. Like I said, sometimes you just need to stop that circuitry and pause. Let them have their feelings and allow yourself to become steady again and to pause those feelings and come back when you're not making that decision in guilt. Because if you don't, you will keep stepping in just to make that moment feel better. And that doesn't always make the situation better. And this is why this matters so much. Because when guilt keeps influencing your decisions, when guilt keeps pulling you to step in and take on more than you should, fix what's not yours to fix, and take on what was never yours to take on, that is not how you move steadily in your life. It may keep things moving for a moment. And it may keep people comfortable in that moment, but not you. And it may even keep the peace for the moment, But I want you to understand this, that that way of living is not sustainable. It's not healthy. And until we learn how to interrupt these patterns, until we learn how to pause and how to get steady and how to deal with what's happening in real life, in real time, without automatically stepping in to fix it, guilt, that guilt will keep you over responding, and it will keep over influencing our decisions every time. And that means that we keep ending up in the same place, on the same hamster wheel, riding that same roller coaster, quietly overloaded, quietly over responsible, quietly taking on more than was ever ours to take on. Because you know what? Their disappointment, it's real. But it's not always yours to fix it. I hope I've left you with something to think about today and moving forward. I've enjoyed our conversation, and I hope you have too. Until next time, next Thursday, you have been here with me, Mischelle O'Neal, and you are on Break Time Live. Take care. Bye-bye.